Heuristic Traps, Normalisation of Deviation, and Expert Halos. Now, if these are things that you've not heard of as an outdoor instructor yet, then don't worry about it. It's absolutely fine. In this episode of Outdoor Instructor Chat, we're going to be covering just those things with some examples of what they are and how and why they're so important to us as outdoor instructors. Hi, my name is Niall from Instructor 101 for outdoor instructors who want to make an even bigger impact on those that they work with. In this episode, I was joined by JP Edgington. Now, there is no doubt JP has influenced some of the work that I've done for Instructor 101, so huge thanks for JP for taking the time to chat. JP is a mountaineering instructor, or MIA. He's a tech advisor. He set up his own business called the Outer Edge. He also later went on to set up something called the Professional Edge Project. Now, I'd really recommend for you to check that out. It's also in a podcast called Pep Talk. And on top of that, he's recently started a new podcast called Sometimes Monkeys Fall Out of Trees. So all of this stuff, I'll make sure there's lots of links in the show notes. Make sure to check that out. Just wait until after this show is finished and then make sure to look that up as well. Other than that, you're here to watch this show, so I'll leave you to it. I'm going to stop waffling, but let me know what you think. On that, enjoy the show. Take care. Welcome to Outdoor Instructor Chat. So first of all, I'd like to say a huge thanks to JP for joining me today because, this is take 3. And so, I'm blown away by your patience. First of all, thank you so much for that because,
My pleasure.
No, it's brilliant. And it's always been really good fun, like chatting with you every time. Like, considering we haven't met as well, it's been brilliant. JP, do you want to take a moment to introduce yourself, tell people where they can find you, what you've been up to, and then, we'll take it from there.
Okay, so my name's JP Edgington. I would say I'm tentatively still in the outdoor industry, having been in there for a good 20 years. Obviously, like many people right now, not a lot of work going on in the outdoors. It's slowly creeping back, and I'm in a similar situation. But I am a mountaineering instructor. I've been a technical advisor in the past. I'm course director of the Climbing Wall Instructor Award courses, as well as, back in the day running my own outdoor adventure business, which concentrated a lot on adventurous charity events. And like a lot of people in the industry, I've worked in outdoor centres, worked for small businesses, delivering a range of stuff. But I would say that primarily I'm a climber. But it was during the Outer Edge, which is what my business I used to run. We got very successful running a variety of these adventurous charity events. But I was pushing really hard, working really hard, and not really taking care of myself properly enough. Got properly burnt out. And as part and parcel of the process of coming back from that, I wanted to understand more about why we do what we do, what had led me to that point and how to make sure I don't go back there. But also during that process, I found out a lot about, behavioral insights and psychological insights, and a lot of personal and professional self-development stuff. And at the same time, I came across some various different topics that really were kind of very timely. A couple of courses that I attended to were very timely, and that kind of sent me on a slightly different tangent down this world of professionalism, which was closely linked to our personal effectiveness. Effectively, when I got burnt out, I ceased to be personally effective, and therefore I couldn't be professionally effective. And that then resulted in me setting up this thing called the Professional Edge Project, which basically looks at how we can be more professional or professionally effective by taking care of our personal effectiveness. It's taken a bit of a backseat of late, what with the things that are going on. Most people can find me on Facebook at Pro Edge Project, or I'm also I have a podcast on across most podcast platforms. If you search for Pep Talk, which is p.e.p, Professional Edge Project Talk, you can see there's 40 odd episodes up there, all talking around professionalism and personal effectiveness. And so I guess that's where we're at now, I suppose. Yeah,
That's
I think.
fantastic. So, as I said to JP before, like this is something which I've been super interested in, and I've followed a lot of certainly the podcasts as well. So I'd highly recommend anyone who listens to this definitely check out the Pep Talk podcast as well. With all the stuff, I'll make sure there's links everywhere. So in the show notes, I'll make sure there's links to all that sort of stuff as well. So make sure to check that out. JP is someone that's helped influence and inspire me a lot with the one-on-one stuff as well, actually. So yeah, this is not only is a bit of a chance for you to pick your brains, but like it's also like a way of me kind of just going, just thank you, because I think generally the stuff that you are doing, the stuff that you have done is fantastic, and I really want people just to know about it and hear about it. So yeah, I just want to kind of get behind you and like cheerlead for you, because
Well, thank you very much, man. It means a lot, because I mean the whole reason I do any of this is to try and help others. You know what I mean? And if somebody else can take just a nugget of what you say and then go and enhance, protect or repair, their personal effectiveness or what they want to achieve, then it's a big tick in my box, and it's kind of really great to hear that. So yeah, I'm pleased and that you've actually gone and applied something and taken something from it. That means a huge amount.
Well, that succinctly leads on to like the first thing that I want to talk about, because you talk about, or you discuss like lots of really important things in my eyes, like really powerful ideas, and I'm sure we'll touch upon a few of those later on. But one of the ways that you introduce your podcasts is by saying if something resonates with you, then you urge them to take action off the back of it, even if it's something small. So information is pointless without application. And I just thought that was such a powerful message, that especially the bit at the end, that information is pointless without application. Yeah, I just love that, and I think it's one of those things that kind of goes, right, okay, I need to be more proactive, or like, there's lots of messages that I take away, but yeah, without actually doing anything with that information, yeah, like I say, it is pointless.
Yeah, we're in the information age, right? There's no shortage of information. We can find information more readily now than we ever have done in the history of humankind, right?
Yeah.
What we are lacking, however, is the taking of action. Most people know exactly what it is they need to do most of the time. Okay, there are some that don't, but most of the time we know what we need to do, should do. But it's the lack of action. And then I think, so the next stage is trying to understand why we don't want to take that action, what mental blockages, cognitive biases, or whatever it is that are causing us to not take the action that we know that we can to do. Most of us know, if we want to lose weight, right? Most of us know what we need to do in order to lose weight. We don't need anything fandangly. You need to burn more calories than you take in. You need to eat decent food. It's not brain surgery. Yet a vast majority of the population is still overweight. If we want to, have better relationships with our with people at work, generally speaking, if you sit down and think about it, you probably know what you need to do, but there's just things in the way, and it's trying to figure out what those things are. Why is it we know what to do, but we're unable to take the action? And that's the thing that's been fascinating to me.
Yeah.
And I think once you can unpick that, then you can open up real opportunity. But it is a thing where like I say, you can find out anything virtually instantaneously. But because of the way in which we have immediate gratification, we can order anything and it just arrives to our house. There's lots of comfort, ease, and convenience to lots of parts of our lives, but we now want that for every part of our life. And sometimes we think, I think that it seems that well, I've read this book. Why has my life not suddenly changed? You go, because you need to take action off the book. You know, I was in a group a while back, and people were going, you know, it was like a 90-day kind of goal kind of group. And they set various goals, and in one thing, it was personal development. It was like, I want to read 3 personal development books in this 90-day period. And it's like, in one way, that's a good thing to do, but in another way, it's utterly pointless if you don't do anything with it. The amount of books you read isn't going to make your life better per se. If they're fiction books and you enjoy the act of reading fiction books, and I'm sure that will improve your life. But if you want to improve in some way, you're reading some personal development book, it's the application of the nuggets in the book. You'd be better off reading half of one book, but applying as much as you can, than just reading 3 books. You know, it's the same with any kind of thing that you do. The number of courses we go on as outdoor instructors, right? And the amount of information that you get, how much of that information is actually then applied? You know, it's usually those, like, you get a couple of little nuggets, you know, attend a 1-day 8-hour course and you'll get like 2 or 3 nuggets, and if you're lucky, and if you can then go and apply those, then that's good. But yeah, I think it's one of those interesting things around information versus application. Anyway, waffling on.
It got me thinking. I was having a chat with a friend last night, and he mentioned something about what the definition of wisdom was. I think I'm trying to remember off the top of my head, so I'll probably get it wrong. But it said it was like the correct application of knowledge.
Yes.
Or
something like that. Yeah, I use knowledge is information. Wisdom is knowing when to use that information. You know, that's the one I use. But yeah, similar.
Yeah. So in fact, that is what he said. So it just got me thinking, like, actually, how many times do we know what it is that we're meant to do, but then might choose not to do it anyway? So we're making the decision. And I think, and when you mentioned about courses, then, like, how many times I've been on different courses and I know I'm meant to take notes. I know that it's going to benefit me, but I don't because I'm lazy. or on the few times that I have done that, like, I like taking photos and bits as an aid to help me memorize stuff. Like, how many people come up to me afterwards, like, would you mind sharing those with me later? Like I find that fascinating as well. Like, we all know that that's what we could be doing to help benefit us, but actually, in reality, like, myself included, like, actually, I might not be doing that.
And there's an interesting thing. There's, like, let's say one thing. Right? So you say you go on a course with 5 people, 10 people, say. There's an interesting statistic that if you had something like, if 7 of the people on that course were started taking notes, the other 3 would probably go, all right, I'm going to start taking notes then, because the majority of other people are, you know, there's a group emphasis, the majority emphasis of people that are, you know, taking notes. You think, oh, I don't want to stand out as being the one not taking notes, so I'll take notes. If, say, 7 people aren't taking notes, then you know, it might be, you go, I probably won't bother taking notes, nobody else is. Interestingly, if you've got like 50-50, then obviously you've got that point where you're not going to stand out whether you do take notes or whether you don't take notes, and it comes down to your own, you know, preferences or you know, what you're looking to get from that particular course, and then your own experiences and habits, good or bad, as to whether you will.
Yeah. That's fascinating. Oh man, if I've read the course, I'm trying to even think about how I could even use that bit of knowledge now already.
Yeah.
Okay, so obviously one of the things you do is the Professional Edge project. So
yes,
I've got to ask, so what is a professional, or what's a professional in your eyes?
So this is something that comes up, and I cover this as one of the first questions, or the topics that we cover in any workshop that I've run. You know, it's like, okay, I'm going to assume that we all here want to be professional, right? You know, yeah, of course we do. We want to be seen as professional. Hands go up, and then I'll go, okay, so what's professional? Define professionalism. It's not just somebody that gets paid, you know. And I'll get people, we'll just, you know, mind them onto a piece of paper. We'll just write down what it is to be a professional. One of the first things that come out is this concept of integrity, of doing what you said you would do, and I've kind of worked that into this thing of being, you do what is required, not just what is desired. And I kind of shorten that into my little kind of watch phrase, which is be bothered. You know, the number of times I do this, you know, you go, oh, do I want to go for a run? I can't be bothered. And as soon as I come across that, you know, I say that in my head, it becomes like a speed bump or a tripwire. And I go, oh, there you go. I've said I can't be bothered. And it reminds me to be bothered, to do the thing that's required, not just what's desired. And there's other aspects. And if you think that come into being what is a professional, you know, I'd highly recommend your listeners just, you know, press pause on this and jot down what they consider would be a professional. What if they were going to employ somebody, or if they were going to work for a professional outfit, what attributes would they want in that person or want in that organization? And it's as much about who you are and how you approach things as it is your skill base. You know what I mean? I'm sure we've all worked with people that are highly knowledgeable, highly experienced, but I wouldn't necessarily call them professional because of their conduct. Maybe they don't turn up on time. Maybe they look quite tardy. Maybe it's just the way in which they interact with other people. But then there's probably other times that you've worked with people. Maybe they don't even get paid. They're volunteers. There's plenty of, and sometimes the volunteer groups like the Mountain Rescue or the RNLI, they epitomize professionalism in both doing what is required, you know, going above and beyond, and the way that they carry out those duties, but they're not getting paid for it. So being paid for it, in my mind, is not, you know, it doesn't define you necessarily as a professional. It's a lot down to, like I say, your approach. And then I put this down, it's a blend of skill set and mindset, as well as what I would say, for sure.
Yeah. Which is a fascinating thing itself, because we touched on this briefly the other day when we were trying to film this, and you introduced me to this idea that there are different types of professional as well. So whether someone is a professional athlete, but then also in the context of maybe that the audience is listening to like a professional outdoor instructor, or they might, however they might take that to look, whether they're radiating this warmth and appear approachable. So not just knowledgeable, but actually approachable. And that will, the degree of that warmth and the professionalism will vary on the context of that situation, which I thought was a really fascinating idea.
Yeah, I've always entertained this idea that in my work, I wanted to reach a point or be very mindful and aware of kind of attaining and projecting this professional approachability. I would hope, because I can't control this, it's somebody else's thoughts and perceptions, but I would hope that somebody would look at me and go, he looks like he knows what he's talking about. I'll go and talk to him. So it combines two aspects there. One, that you appear knowledgeable, experienced, current. And two, that you are the kind of person that somebody would feel comfortable going up to and speaking to. Because obviously you all know a lot of people that are highly competent, experienced, and knowledgeable, but they're a bit offish, or they just lack that approachability, which I think is an important part. What's the point of having all this knowledge if people don't feel confident or comfortable coming to you to find out about it? And I think that there's various, you know, interesting psychological kind of reasons behind, you know, why people may behave like that. But I think for me, it's that I want to look like I know what I'm doing. Well, I want to know what I'm doing, but I want to make sure that I look like I know what I'm doing. And that comes down to how you dress. Now, granted, you can't dress up a turd, but equally, you know, people will make a lot of decisions within the first few seconds of seeing you, hearing you, and being with you. You know, and so I think that you don't have to be dressed in £1,000 worth of Arc'teryx, but you shouldn't have everything held together by Gore-Tex, by gaffer tape and, covered in mud. If you've obviously just come off a session and now you're going into, you haven't, that's maybe slightly different. But if you're rocking up in the morning and your gear's kind of ripped and stuck together. Now, I know we don't have tons of money, but it's not about having tons of money. It's just about putting in a little bit of effort and thinking about how you appear to others. I remember during my mountaineering instructor training, a couple of key lessons that stood out. It was possibly the best 9 days of training I have ever had. Intense, full-on, amazing training up at Plessy Brennan. And one of the things they said was, people will learn as much from what they see you do as from what you tell them. So you have to project this perfect picture. Because by just doing something and going, technically you should do it like so and so, but I'm just going to do it now for speed's sake. No, because they won't hear the words, they'll see what you do. And because if they hold you in some degree of respect, they will want to emulate you. And so the way in which you are, the way in which you act, the way in which you get your kit out of the bag, you put your bag in, the way in which you take care of your clothes. Again, you don't have to be immaculate, but you also don't have to be, scruffy. You can't ask a kid to look after their waterproofs on a session if you're not looking after your waterproofs. It's leading by example. And it goes beyond just what you say. It's like I say, it's just how you approach stuff and how you look. And I think that's that was one thing that stuck with me loads, always presenting this perfect picture, because people will only remember a certain percentage of what you show them anyway. So if you're not showing them the absolute epitome of best practice, given the situation, and as you get into kind of mountaineering, the situations are very varied, but at CWI, RCI level, things are pretty clear cut. So if you're not presenting a perfect picture, they're going to go away and remember 50, 60, 70% of an imperfect picture, and that's probably not good enough. On all the courses I would run, I would be very particular. Very particular about knots being tied up, very particular about how things are orientated, because I want people to go away with as perfect a picture as possible, knowing that there will be some knowledge fade. You know what I mean? And so it's, just one of those things that's always stuck with me from that particular time. And I think for me, that's also part and parcel of being a professional, being really diligent about all aspects of your work, including how you look and how you present yourself in the various ways.
It sounds like such a good course, but that is that's one hell of a takeaway as well. And I could see why that struck a chord. No, that's brilliant. So one of the things that I kind of know you for is some of the work that you did with monkeys sometimes fall out of trees.
Yes.
And that, I think it was through that you introduced me to Heuristic Traps and Normalisation of Deviation as just a couple of things that came out. I just thought they were just such powerful ideas or concepts or things that actually happen. I was just wondering if you wouldn't mind just taking a bit of time just to touch on those little bits and maybe an example as well of what those things are, just for the audience, because I just think it's so powerful and great to have an awareness of.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, these things, those kind of two terms, if you like, kind of cropped up again during the process of my comeback from this kind of burnout phase. I was already like 20 years in the industry. I was already a mountaineering instructor, and I was attending a professional standards workshop through the Association of Mountaineering Instructors, delivered by Steve Howe. And during that workshop, they were talking about professional standards, what was professionalism, and so on. And they talked about these things called heuristic traps. And I'm there nodding, going, heuristic traps, looking around the room, and everyone else is nodding. And I'm going, I do not know what a heuristic trap is. Right? What the hell is that? And I was under the table on my phone trying to Google it. I couldn't spell it. right? WHO, heuristic.
Yeah.
I couldn't spell it. So I'm like, I have no idea. So I had to put my hand up and go, Steve, sorry, I'm a bit stupid. What's a heuristic trap? And once I found out what it was, which I'll go into in a minute, I was amazed at how important it was and how it was 20 years into this industry before I'd even heard about it. Now, obviously, other people have heard about it before me, and I consider myself pretty current. But it was such a influencing factor potentially, and I'd realised that I'd not directly dealt with them or known them and labelled them as heuristic traps, but I had dealt with what they were, their consequences in various ways in my practices and policies, if you like. But essentially, a heuristic is a mental shortcut. It's like an autopilot. And it's designed, it's the way in which we ease the amount of thinking we have to do. Okay? So a heuristic is a good thing most of the time. Yeah. Okay? It's just autopilot. It just allows us to do things and make decisions without a huge amount, or rather any, rational, logical thinking, objective reasoning. Yeah? We just go into autopilot and do it. And there are various ones like familiarity and scarcity and acceptance and availability heuristics. And again, a simple Google search. Let me see if I can spell it right. Heuristic or HUER, one of the way. But Google's very clever and it'll sort it out. So HEURISTICS, heuristics. Now a heuristic trap, so these things are useful, okay? These things are useful, but a heuristic trap is when that mental shortcut, or we're using these mental shortcuts when we should be using objective reasoning, okay? And a lot of work has been done on this in the outdoors through skiing, backcountry skiing and the like, when people were looking into incidents around why avalanches were happening. And there's certain things like social proof is a classic one, where because loads of other people, maybe peers or people that we think we know and respect are doing something, we just go, that's all right, they're doing it, so I can do it too. They've all gone across that slope, so it must be fine, so I'll just go across that slope. Whoomp! You get avalanche, they didn't. Rather than going, hold on, this slope is, within the angle range of a potential suspect's slope. What was the snowfall like recently? Just because somebody else went across doesn't guarantee that it's safe, doesn't remove the need for you to be objective in your decision making. There's other ones like the expert halo, where you might be with somebody you deem as more knowledgeable and experienced than you, and so you suddenly defer all decision making to them.
Yep.
And it also comes in with a little bit of group think as well. And there's a great example. A bunch of American mountain guides were on one of their yearly meetups, and they all met up, having breakfast, coffee, and said, okay, let's get out on the hill and start doing some stuff, going through some technical skills. So they, generally speaking, mountain guides work on their own. They don't often meet up. So they're having a good old chat as they're walking out into the mountains. And then, I don't know, maybe there's 6 or 7 of them. And all of a sudden, they all stop dead at the same time. And they look about and they now realize they have walked straight into the middle of a potentially dodgy slope. Well, they've walked into the middle of a snow field, a snow slope.
Sure.
And not one of them has stopped and gone, hold on, we need to do a snowpack assessment. Okay, what's going on? Okay. Not one, because they were all distracted slightly, but also in the back of their mind using it. Oh, I'm with so-and-so. He's super good at this stuff. If there's a problem, he would have made a decision. He would have called it, or she would have called it. And because there was all this knowledge and expertise, they all assumed that somebody else would make a decision rather than them needing to make one, because it's just easier. And then actually they all realized that, and then there they were, stood in this middle of this suspect or this slope that was untested and unassessed, and then they kind of carefully kind of walked back to a safe point and then did the assessments. But again, very interesting lessons for the start of the day. And that's a bunch of mountain guides. So these things with heuristics and heuristic traps, they're not something that you just go, oh, it's just novices it's novices that make mistakes. Not at all. Sometimes, certainly with a heuristic or the mental shortcut of familiarity, where you're very, very familiar with a venue, a crag, a client, a route, a river, a process or whatever, that you just get into, very habitually running through things.
Yeah.
Which in one way you can't objectively and rationally think about every single thing every single moment of the day, otherwise you'd never get anything done. You'd be mentally exhausted by 9 o'clock in the morning. But every so often it is important to stay aware, certainly in an outdoor environment where things may look the same but they aren't the same. But that familiarity, the more you are on that crag, I've been on this crag for 10 years and nothing's ever happened. All of a sudden, that approach of nothing's ever happened, so what does it matter, could lead you to stop thinking objectively. Now, obviously, experience is a good thing so long as it doesn't start to fog up your ability to make objective decisions.
Yeah.
In some ways, when you work in very risky situations and things are very dynamic and things are constantly changing, you are much better at objective reasoning because you have to make these objective decisions all the time. There is no constant. But I think when things don't change, that's when it becomes quite dangerous. And there's lots of other things that come in. I mean, it's a very vast topic. That is psychology. I mean, the human brain is the most complex thing in the known universe, right? Each of us is wandering around with one, yet we don't really know how it works properly. We've got a good idea, but it changes, almost decade on decade, what we think and how we understand things. But there are certain things that we can do. And you might be listening to this, you might be early on in your career and you're just kind of getting your head around figure of 8 knots and draw strokes and, assisted belay device, who knows what you're getting your head round. And this just seems like a whole factor that you go, well, I don't really know that I need to worry about this. But imagine if you did have these kind of things, commitment, scarcity, social proof, the expert halo, you understood at a very basic level these various potential pitfalls. We can make our sessions that much more safer, that much safer for our clients and our organizations, and obviously for ourselves. And I think it's one of the things that whenever I talk about on talks or seminars or workshops is that about getting this stuff into the current conversation is key. Removing it from being taboo and just having conversations is what I do when I run events. So one event that I used to run, and I'll be looking to run again, is a Dartmoor overnight north-south in one hit 16-hour night walk. Right?
Wow.
Yeah. Big. And with all of these charity events, this is one of the things that we used to have, is you used to have a lot of potential for you had a lot of commitment. You had promised a charity and X number of participants that on this day you were going to deliver this thing. And it's very easy to just push on with that commitment because the power of the commitment is stronger than maybe and it always potentially more comfortable and convenient than the uncomfortable question or discussions around having to cancel due to weather or such like. Okay. And what I look to do is on these this particular event, there's a small crew of us, 6 staff, right? The numbers on these things are fairly small in terms of participants. We're 6 staff. But inside my risk assessment, I have area, I make mention of in the risk assessment and in the briefing notes, I make mention of the potential heuristic traps that could arise. And I open up the conversation. If you think that yes, this is my business, this is my event, I am paying your wages and all the rest of it. But if you think that I am making a poor decision, or you want clarification on that decision, I am asking you now, please say, and just, and open that up. Now, whether they still feel like they don't want to or they can't, I try to have a relationship with my team. They're all really good friends, generally speaking, and even that can bring in difficulties. But I'm like, if you are a true friend, if you are a good friend, which I know you are, you will make the difficult decision. You will do what's required, not just what's desired, what's comfortable or easy, because you're a professional and because you're a close friend of mine. You won't avoid the question or not say anything because you're a friend of mine. You'll actually do it. And by stating it openly, I think I'm increasing the chances of them having a conversation going, JP, I'm concerned about the weather. I know you're keen to crack on, but can we have another look objectively and come to a decision as a team? And like, okay, yeah, that's cool. And I think that's a great way to go. And like I say, I've got these various things that are in the risk assessment and the operational order that we run out just so it's out there. I remember it was in one of the Outdoor Learning magazines. Again, one of these nuggets that stuck with me, and I've used this kind of very simple brief quite a few times. And it was about a fire chief who would manage either in Australia or in America. I can't remember. I think it was America. And he would obviously have to get into a situation and have to make some very serious and quick decisions about getting in and managing these forest fires. And part and parcel, he would finish his brief, he would deliver his brief, and he would finish it with kind of, I think, like these 3 questions. Okay. Given the amassed amount of experience and knowledge that I'm stood in front of here, is there anything you are unclear about, unable or unwilling to do? Is there anything that you think I have missed? And I think having that, you've got a bunch of firefighters. Yeah, you're a fire chief, but if you've got 10 firefighters and they've all been with you for 10 years, that's 100 years worth of cumulative experience and 10 different perspectives on this one situation. And I think that's very humbling and open, and somebody who's very solution orientated and going, right, I'm not going to suggest that. I've got to make the decision ultimately. But given what you know, is there anything you are not happy to do, or are unable to do for whatever reason, or unwilling to do, or is there anything that you think that I've missed? Now, obviously, you can't be there having 20 conversations. Oh, I think we should do this and think we should do that. Obviously, he's built up a team that has got trust, and if he thinks, I think, boss, what about this and this? Right, yeah, I completely forgot about that. Well done, because we're all human. And so I think what he does in that statement is saying that I'm human. I might have missed something. Is there anything obvious that I've missed? You're not going to get, a bunch of people going, well, why don't we do it all completely differently? It'll just be if there's a particular aspect that he's missed. And I think that's quite an interesting way to kind of avoid some of those commitments, because we all have these mental shortcuts, these autopilots. They are part of us, and they will invariably help us, but sometimes they can trip us up. And in the business that we're in, which is risk management, potentially falling into a heuristic trap, it's going to have really negative consequences. And I think it's fascinating when you look at potential incidents and potential problems that these things kind of crop up. And going back to this, monkeys sometimes fall out of trees was the name of a bunch of workshops that I used to run talking around these things. And I've also now evolved that into a podcast. First episode is partly recorded. I haven't done the intro yet, but it's going to be a climbing podcast about climbing incidents, accidents, epics, and near misses, where we just openly and informally discuss them and chat about them and try and get the lessons out of them. Try to see the commitment heuristics or or where those people made a mistake, and talk about that openly and in a kind of a chilled out climber based way, so that other people maybe go, oh my God, I do that. Or maybe it just sticks in the back of somebody's mind and they don't make the same mistake. Because the whole thing, monkeys sometimes fall out of trees, is something that was told to me years back.
Yeah.
I was working as a door supervisor, as a bouncer, right? And somebody got thrown out. And I'm like, why did he get thrown out? And they went, oh, he's banned. He's on the banned list. I'm like, oh my God, I let him in. So I felt really bad about letting this guy in. He was on the ban list. I didn't know this. He's really bad. I mean, when you've got like 100 people on the ban list, it's quite difficult to remember them all. But I remember a mate of mine who said to me, mate, monkeys sometimes fall out of trees. And I was like, what the are you on about? Mate, mistakes happen. Even monkeys, they fall out of trees sometimes. You just got to get back up in a tree. And that one statement stuck with me. Absolutely stuck with me. Now, it's not an excuse that we just go, well, anybody makes mistakes, never mind A. But it's like, if a creature that has evolved over millennia to its environment can make a mistake, right, in that environment, then we can. We, as human beings, when we're operating in either rivers or when we're operating on high ropes courses or in the mountains or on the cliffs, we can make mistakes, all right? But it's how we deal with those mistakes that's quite critical. And it's not just novices. Anybody can. But it's just sometimes the mechanism or the nature of the mistake might vary between novice and the more experienced people. And so that's kind of where the monkeys things come from, and a little chat about heuristics. And I can take a drink before I go on to normalization, or if you have any questions around that.
Yeah, well, no, I just want to say it's all fascinating stuff. So thank you for taking the time to go into that in such amazing detail, because it's just well worth it. And JP was kind enough to give me a bit of a preview into that podcast as well that I was talking about. So, and it was really easy to listen to and really thought provoking and really accessible. So again, I look forward to listen to more of those. But again, I'd encourage lots of people to check that out as well. So, they're just brilliant.
So normalization, we'll see if we can do this relatively quickly.
Sure.
So the one thing I would say, like if you're kind of like, oh, this is all kind of interesting, then just a simple Google, certainly around the backcountry skiing and heuristic traps, because it makes it much more applicable to the outdoor industry.
Okay.
And a simple Google search would kind of get you off on the right track. You can, like I have, get delved right into the psychology literature and behavioral literature, but that can be quite heavy. But if this really kind of tweaks your interest, then go and do that. But then again, more importantly, take it and apply it and have a look at your own practices as an outdoor practitioner, as an outdoor professional. Often I'll talk around this on a personal level, even on work-based workshops, in centres and the like, because it's a little bit easier to talk about our personal practices than maybe our professional practices when we're in the workplace, but invariably it's a good way to get things going. And before I jump into the normalization of deviation or deviance, if I can, I'll just kind of give a little bit of a backstory. So the reason I kind of got into this, or one of the kind of key moments, as I remember, is as a technical advisor, I was asked to go and deliver some best practice refresher type workshop stuff at a climbing wall. And the conversation went a bit like this: JP, can you go and show them how to back up the ropes? They need, revision on their supervision because they're not supervising as well, and also, their ground anchors are, looking a bit ropey, no pun intended. And I'm like, yeah, but I knew this climbing wall really well. Mm-hmm. I had assessed at both site-specific and national governing body level a lot of these instructors. They were highly experienced, very knowledgeable instructors on the whole. Even their site-specific training was probably on a par, if not better, than CWA or CWI instruction, because it was 2 days purely focused on their center. And so immediately I was like, if I go in there and tell them what they need to do, show them what they need to do, we run this workshop, I'm probably going to get, metaphorically and mentally, a one-fingered response. You know what I mean? They're obviously not going to say that or do it, but in their head, they're just going to be, right, yeah, I already know how to do this. Or alternatively, if I ask them to deliver me a best practice workshop, they could probably do it better than I could. It is not that they do not know. This comes right back to what we were talking about before. It's not that they don't know what to do. There is something stopping them from applying it. Okay. And that's what we covered on this workshop. And we talked about these things of heuristics, of cognitive bias, and of overfamiliarity, of complacency and what causes complacency. And again, we talked loosely around personal climbing, which was easier to talk about, but soon enough it led into the aspect of what they did in their jobs. And one guy just stood there and he had this real epiphany. It wasn't like the most comfortable workshop in the world. You could see a lot of nerves were being touched and a lot of egos were potentially being knocked out of place a little bit, potentially, or threatened. Because we all have, this need for status, and we all like to hold ourselves in regard that I am a professional and I know what I'm doing. But this held up that clearly mistakes are happening, and these are some of the reasons why. Because often when we do make mistakes, as it's like when mistakes go up, or when performance declines, rationalization increases, I think is the phrase. So people rationalize what they're doing. And this one chap in particular, a very interesting subject, was like, you know what? When we got onto the subject of normalization of deviation, I'll give you an example, and then we'll get into the subject.
Sure.
He once had a group that turned up late, and because he really wanted to get this group going, he knew them, familiarity. They only had so much time, scarcity. They were already here, commitment. He went, you know what? We'll just do a really short briefing and then we'll crack on with the climbing. Even though protocol says all groups have to have a full briefing. He cut short the briefing, didn't cover half the stuff. And off they went, and they had a session. The next week they came back, and because it was easier and kind of nicer, because the group got to do a bit more climbing and so on. So it was from a point of relatively well intended why he did it. He cut the briefing short again, but then he found that he was cutting briefings short in other sessions as well, to the point where that became the norm, was to cut a briefing short. And when nothing bad goes wrong, it's very easy to justify. Certainly when safety measures seem convoluted. But, and thankfully in this situation, he realized this before anything had gone wrong. But if something had gone wrong on a session, one of the first things any good solicitor is going to do, even a crap solicitor, is going to go, okay, let's have a look at your paperwork. In here, the paperwork says first thing in the session is, once you've gone through all the competencies of staff, it says here that all groups will receive a full briefing, which covers this, 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 and this. On that session, did you give a full briefing?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, if he goes, well, no, or lies, never great. But if the group goes, well, no, we only did a couple of things, immediately, as a organization, you've got no feet to stand on. You've just got a gaping hole in your case for defense, a gaping hole.
Yeah.
And from there, it will just be used to unravel more and more and more. But it's very easy, because of the purpose and reasons of comfort, ease and convenience and familiarity and so on, and these things that come into play, if we don't keep them in check, if we're not aware of them and don't keep them in check, they can affect our ability to do what is required. Because we will do what is desired more than what is uncomfortable. Okay, we're just creatures that look for things that are comfortable and easy and convenient and soon and certain and safe. And when it comes to the normalization of the original term is deviance, but it's a kind of an unfortunate term. It makes you sound like deviant behavior is you dress up in weird stuff and poke badgers with spoons or something, you know what I mean? And that we've just encapsulated that into our society, that we've normalized that deviant behavior. Where I like is the normalization of deviation, where we've normalized deviating from either the legal way of doing something or the moral or ethical way of doing something, if that makes sense. And we've basically normalized that shortcut. In an example like I've just given, the guy who had a shorter brief. And you get a lot of people go, yeah, well, I wouldn't do that. That's not me. And a very simple question I post is this. Okay, now, do you drive?
Yeah.
You drive? Yeah, drive a car. What is, for a car on the motorway, the national speed limit?
70 miles an hour.
What speed do you drive on a motorway?
70 miles an hour. Every single time. 100%.
Yes. But I bet most people don't. Most people would answer, you go, well, no, it's about, but then what comes after that usually, and I had this, it's great, I did this at a big seminar, and a very top manager came out with this next kind of statement. Oh yeah, but we all know that the speed limit's outdated. Which I do. Did you not just realize you just come out with the rationalization? Your ability to follow the speed limit, it is the law, not a suggestion or a guideline or advice. It is a law. Oh yeah, but they don't stop you till 77. They don't bother stopping you at 80. It's the law. But what we do is we justify it and we rationalize it and try to use fact and logic to do so. But what we've actually realized we've done is we've normalized the deviation from the speed limit. And we'll drive at 78, 80, 85. We just get used to it. And I think one of the worst normalizations that you can see, and I could walk down, I live about 2 minutes walk from the high street. I could walk down to my high street and I could stand there for probably 5 minutes and I'd see 3 people driving past on their phones. Yeah. Now, the fact that you are 20 times more likely to have an accident when you're on your phone, it is illegal to drive whilst using your phone. Yet that is probably one of the most normalized deviations you'll see. And in our current climate, but is usually what comes in. And this will be an interesting one as well. Again, lots of rationalization will come in here. We all know what the current guidelines are in terms of social distancing. As we record this, we're like the 26th or something of July. And social distancing is still in place. Yet, we will see clear and obvious deviations, how we've normalized not social distancing, or we've normalized gathering in more than 6, which right now you're not supposed to do from different households. You know what I mean? And that's normalized, unless it's like a funeral or a wedding. But it's normalized. We're just, it's all right. And then what we do is we just pull out these justifications for it, which make us feel better, because it's easier to do the deviation than it is to stick to the thing. And the normalization of deviation, I heard this term from an article that was shared to me by Tim Davies, Fast Jet Performance, great podcast, Tim Davies, Fast Jet Performance. And in that, he references a book by Diane Vaughan, which is The Challenger Disaster. And in there, they cited the Challenger disaster down to the normalization of deviance. NASA, rocket scientists, had normalized deviation from their protocols, which caused the Challenger disaster. And in his podcast, Tim Davies was referring to a situation where the RAF is arguably one of the best air forces in the world, fast jet pilots being the top of that tree, and he, within the space of a week, had normalized deviation from standard protocol, and as a result almost put his buddy, and a multi-million-pound plane into the floor. he managed to avoid it.
Mm.
But this is the interesting thing, is if it can happen to fighter pilots, rocket scientists, and there's plenty of reading, if you look at Black Box Thinking, which is an awesome book by Matthew Syed, brain surgeons or surgeons and doctors can also kind of fall foul of these things, then it can certainly happen to us. And if you use your mobile phone, if you drive over 70 on the motorway, you already normalize deviates, or you deviate from the legal, social, moral, ethical norm, if you like.
Yep.
And again, but I've driven at 70 and I've never had an accident. Until the time you have. It's a bit like going, well, I've always used my phone, I've not died. Yeah, until the time you have. And there are a couple of very interesting ways in which you can start to combat that, one of which is having a conversation about it. But I had a very interesting, let's bring this back to the outdoors, a very interesting conversation with a chap. I was doing a Three Peaks event. We're up at Nevis, the big one. I had a big 45-litre, 50-litre rucksack rammed full of group kit. He comes out, he's got like a 20-litre, this other leader's got this 20-litre rucksack. Obviously, we're going up kind of quite late. And I'm like, where's all your kit? I went, well, I've just got me a spare jumper, bit of food, water bottle, tiny first aid kit. I went, where's your group kit? He goes, well, I don't bother taking a group shelter. I've not used one in years. More about any spare kit, just a spare jacket or whatever. We're just up and down in a few hours. Don't see the point. Right.
Wow.
Literally, my bag was 3 times the size.
Yeah.
But because of the familiarity, the repetition. So whenever you've got familiarity and you've got repetition, these are things that can really, cause potential issues. When we have scarcity, when we have overcommitment, well, I promised them we'd get this done, so let's crack on. And we had another issue later on that same trip with a commitment and scarcity issue, which I might get onto. But there's an example how standard practice, if you're out in the hills, will be to take a group shelter, take a group first aid kit. I'm not saying we've got to take all the kit in the world for everyone. You don't even have to take it yourself. You can give it to one of the group members, but you would at least have it with you. But at one point, he made the decision not to do it. Mm-hmm. And because it was easier, he didn't have to carry as much weight. It was lighter. That became the norm. And then what follows is the justification. And it's all fine. It's all lovely until that one time a dude blows his ankle and you need to get a group shelter out. Now, chances are there's enough people on the Ben at that time you could probably borrow one. But really, what if there isn't? And then what if all of a sudden, you've got to answer for your actions? You go, well, you then got to try and justify. You don't have a huge amount. Standard practice. Everyone will say that standard practice is you take a group shelter. You don't have to carry it. Somebody else, but there should be one in the group, right? It's good practice. Or if they've all got Blizzard biddy bags, so they could all get one of those. There needs to be something, not just that's appropriate to manage that risk. And it was obvious because I had read, because it was my first ever time working and last working for this particular organization. I'd read the risk assessments the week before, and it said leaders must take group first aid kit, bit of spare clothing, you know what I mean? Standard, couple of pairs of gloves, and a group shelter. Each leader, not just one in the group, So it was one of those things where you're like, well, that's a clear example of the normalization. Later on in the trip, we'd got to Snowdonia, and the winds were huge. There were loads of teams binning off their Three Peaks and not going up from the Penny Pass car park. Loads of people that were binning it off. Wow. Yet this leader who was more experienced, on these jobs and had been in the organization for longer, although I was a higher qualification, I was kind of taking the second step. Said, "Oh, we'll just keep going. We'll go and have a look." And I get in one way that you can kind of tired participants. You've got high winds, you've got a lot of things stacking against you. And so I'm there going, so what do I do? How do I deal with this, but without making a scene? How do I express my concerns?
Yeah.
And again, there's various ways which you can do that, but one way is just to keep kind of asking questions, or double checking. Okay, so what's our plan here? What are we thinking for this? Okay, given the current weather situations, what are we thinking in this situation? What's our cut off for turning back? Because it might well be that he didn't have in his head a clear cut off as to what it meant, what criteria meant he was going to turn back. In my head, we were kind of already there. But we got to a point where we were getting really blowy. And, I was struggling to stand up. And we got to a point where we were all having a rest, and you can see in the eyes of the group, they were looking concerned. And he was still, had this commitment and scarcity. We've got to get up there. I don't want to. He had this thing of, I've never failed on the 3 peaks.
Yeah.
Well, hold on. So doesn't mean you never will. That's not a record to be holding up. That could just well be that you've often put people at risk when you shouldn't have to keep your record up. And so I was continuing to ask questions and trying to be appropriate and not step on any toes. But there was just about to be a point where he said, and I was like expressing, I'm like, you know what, if anyone wants to come back, I'll take them back. You can come back with me. Let's bail out. And you could see the relief in a lot of people's faces. They're like going, oh yeah, okay, yeah, that's good. And he was like, no, we're going to continue and see if we can get around the corner. And he went around the corner, and this massive blast took him and pushed him against this wall. It just took him off his feet. And then he stood up and went, no, I'm with you. Yeah, maybe we should turn back. And I'm like, oh, thank God for that. Because otherwise I was going to have to kind of take it from that professional politeness and take it to the next level and go, I think we all should be turning back. I don't think anybody should be going. Yeah. But often we will find ourselves in those difficult positions where you have to ask yourself, well, how will I do it? How do I not make a scene? How do I, certainly with stronger characters, but there's, and I forget it in the top of my head, but there's a process that aircraft crew have implemented, because there are a bunch of times with expert halos, the God complex, where people wouldn't question doctors, or in this case, airline pilots. And there's this 4-stage, I think it's probe, something. There's this 4-stage decision-making process where, first of all, you probe the decision-making. Okay, what are we thinking here? What's our plan? So just by open questioning, and then it escalates to basically intervention, but you've got this 4-stage process that slowly ramps up. You sure we should be doing this? Because there's plenty of examples of pilots getting in the zone and just a bit narrow vision and thinking they've got to make all the decisions, and actually they've missed that they could just switch the reserve fuel on, or that they just missed that they didn't check something, and yet somebody else objectively could have inputted, but because of this God complex, they didn't want to do that. Yeah. But in the end, we all came back. Everyone was safe, but it was a very interesting kind of lesson in heuristics in the real world, in normalization in the real world, and more importantly, what you do about it. Look at just good noticing it and going, oh yeah, he was overcommitted to that. Did you do anything? No. Then afterwards, what do? You got to have the awkward email back to the boss. But if you don't, they're going to just keep on doing it. So yeah, so that's kind of a brief thing on normalization. I mean, there's various things, like say, you can do to try and protect it. One is having it in open conversation, learning about it, trying to understand where inside your organization or in your personal, professional practices it can come in. The normalization could come in with not using a prusik, not backing up a gree-gree, not putting in a knot in the end of your abseil rope. Yeah. You just, I've never abseiled off it. Yeah, until the one time that you did, because a couple of other factors got in the way and so on. Or you're using somebody else's rope. And then you abseil off the end. Or, you're lowering somebody and you don't tie a knot in the end of your climbing rope at the climbing wall, but you go to a new gym and it's 3 meters higher. Yep. Off he goes. Broken ankle, you know. So yeah, having it in the conversation. But then there's also this interesting thing about doing the right thing and a mark of the elite. So those that use a Prusik, those that do a function test on a gree-gree, those that give a full briefing, that's what elite people do. It's that elevates you to the elite. Those that go through the mundane checks, yeah, that's what elite guys do and girls do. You know, that's what the elite instructors do. You know, they're aware of normalization, they're aware of heuristics, and they talk openly about it. That's the mark of somebody who's up there. And you become, so instead of seemingly making shortcuts or being the thing of someone who is good because they're really quick and they're really slick at what they do, and the only way we can be slick is by taking shortcuts, but actually the reason they're slick is they've actually, you know, reduced the amount of faff they take through years of experience. But yeah, making that, you know, the normalization of excellence the thing, you know what I mean? But that takes a bit of a culture change inside an organization, which is it's a whole nother subject. But yeah, normalization of deviation, the Tim Davies podcast, how I nearly crashed a £40 million jet fighter, is his podcast, which talks around that. And there's various bits online around it. Like I say, could go on for hours. But even if you just start dabbling tentatively into the literature, I think it's quite fascinating because it affects us all. You know, it happens to me still. Just because you learn about it doesn't mean it goes away. You're more aware, and therefore you can better manage the risks.
Yeah, I really like the normalization of excellence as well as a concept. Yeah, that was really powerful. Thank you so much for that, because there's so many things which you managed to relate back to the industry. I'm sure a lot of people, including myself, can relate to the idea as well of the trying to rush through an intro because you're trying to make up for time. I'm sure that's something which is,
and it can be well intended because you try and help out that group, you know, that don't come to the war that often. They struggle to get the funds. You're trying to do them a favor, but actually you're not doing yourself a favor. You're not doing the organization a favor, and you're not doing them a favor if you don't give them a proper brief.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's an interesting one. It's complex, but it's yeah.
Yeah, it's a complex thing. There's no doubt. And yeah, it can apply not just within the outdoor instructor world, but like lots of areas of our lives. But I think it's just great to have just even the awareness of it, or just the ability that just allows you to start questioning things just that little bit to make you think about things, which is brilliant.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Hopefully. Thanks, boss.
Yeah, thank you. Like, so I was wondering very quickly if we could go through some very quick fire-ish questions.
Yes.
And then we'll wrap things up. So nice and quick then. So favorite outdoor space?
Probably. Yeah, just one pick jumps to mind. It's probably Chudley Rocks, which most people don't like because it's polished. But since I probably put most of the polish on it, it's probably Chudley Rocks in Devon. It's where I cut my early teeth. I've got such fond memories of good times, good people. So it'll be Chudley Rocks, probably closely followed by either Dartmoor or North Wales.
Beautiful. So if anyone goes there and it's polished, we know who.
Blame me. Blame me. I don't care. If you go there and it's polished, you need to up your grade because as soon as you get over sort of HVS, the polish disappears somewhat. So
that's the trick.
Yeah.
All right then. So favorite piece of gear or equipment?
Interestingly, I'm going to very quickly Montane Flux jacket right now because I've used in all conditions, summer, winter, cold, motor pitch climbing, winter, but it's just been the go-to piece. And I'm on my fourth one, not because it doesn't last, it's just because I've hammered it. When I was freelancing, however, and more static, the Montane Extreme Smock, like basically a buffalo That's saved many a day from being utterly miserable. That was the go-to piece. So yeah, either of those two.
Yeah, like huge shout. Like I've got one of those extreme smocks. They're amazing.
Gosh, just a hug in the jacket, isn't it? Really.
Just so good. Like you put it on, like if it's cold, it'll just instantly make you smile. They're amazing.
Yeah.
All right, so if you could complete this sentence then. So a good instructor always has
Acute awareness.
Right.
Because without it, you can't make a judgment and assessment of it. You can't make good decisions unless you're aware of what the situation is, whether that's weather, risk, which is a combination of lots of things, awareness of yourself, awareness of your colleagues, awareness of your clients and how, and of how the session's going, of energy levels, yours, theirs, and of how all of those things are constantly changing and having an effect on each other. If you want to make good decisions, which is a hallmark of a good instructor, then you've got to have good awareness.
Yeah. Oh mate, I love that. That's brilliant. Like trying to hear it, like just that pause there. I was just like trying to allow that to sink in for a bit. But yeah, that makes perfect sense. Perfect sense. All right. So, what would you like to know more about?
Me? Still more about the human brain and our human behaviors.
Yeah.
Still an ongoing, as it will be for a long time. But I think the more you know, then the better equipped you are, because it's about that awareness. If you understand how you work, if you want to know how to fix a car, you need to understand how it works to then understand how it's broken to then be able to fix it. If you want to know how to improve yourself mentally, physically, you have to know how you work. So it would be that probably.
Yeah, I guess it's the tool that we're constantly using all the time. So
yeah,
you know how to
and
use
it wears out. It's not constant. It's not fixed.
Yeah,
but it can be almost infinitely improved.
Oh, fantastic. All right, and then last quickfire question. So, best advice for an outdoor instructor? Not to say that you haven't given loads of amazing advice already, but is there one that you'd like, this is the definite one that
probably back to, I mean, there's tons of nuggets that I've been given over the years, but probably that idea of presenting the perfect picture.
Yeah.
No matter where you are, I don't care if you're, a climbing assistant or whether you're whatever level of BCU you happen to be, just present the perfect picture, knowing that people will see it as much, learn as much from what they see you do as from what you tell them, and that there will be knowledge fade. And so anything less than perfect, you're doing them an injustice by not presenting the perfect picture.
Fantastic.
And half the time, the reason we don't is because it's easier not to. And again, it comes down to doing what's required, not just what's required. Then in which case I'll encapsulate it and just say, be bothered.
Brilliant. Absolutely perfect. JP, thank you so much for taking the time to do this, mate.
My pleasure, mate. Anytime.
Absolutely fantastic. I've really loved it. And there's been so much information there, loads of nuggets of information there, which is brilliant.
Go and do something with it. Maybe I could have just said one thing for 2 minutes and then shut up and gone, well, when you've done something with that, you can come back for more.
I think that's the perfect way to wrap this up with the start, bring it around full circle and say, with this knowledge, the information is pointless without application. So I think that's it.
Yeah.
Nice one.
Thanks, Bosch. Appreciate your time.
All right, lovely. Cheers.
So once again, huge thanks to JP for taking the time to chat. There was loads of great bits of information in there. Like I said, this information is useless without application. So if there are bits that resonate with you, then like I said, take action on it. That aside, if you're interested in taking part in an outdoor instructor chat yourself, or if you've got questions that you'd like me to ask other people that work in the outdoor industry, then don't be afraid to reach out. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, so find me on there, drop me a message, and I'm sure I'll try and find out some answers for you. Other than that, thank you so much for your support as always. Make sure to like it, share it with other outdoor instructors, hit the subscribe button and the bell icon so you never miss out on more free content from Instructor 101. Other than that, you know the drill. Thank you so much for your support as always, and until next time, take care.